When my son became a businessman, he told me, "You're no longer part of this family, and you won't get a single penny from me." I just smiled, opened the envelope, and everyone was stunned. I've always believed that a mother should celebrate her child's birthday with joy, no matter how old they are. That belief had carried me through every one of Matthew's birthdays, from the days of balloons and homemade cakes to the sleek, store-bought desserts Carla preferred now. But this year, I felt something different in the air. The living room was full of chatter, the hum of voices blending with the faint clink of glasses. The table groaned under the weight of roast beef, buttery mashed potatoes, and Carla's overly decorated cupcakes. I'd made my signature potato salad, though I noticed it sat mostly untouched. People seem to prefer Carla's catered dishes these days. Matthew stood near the fireplace, surrounded by his colleagues and friends. He looked so handsome, tall, confident, that easy smile that had once been just for me. I stayed by the edge of the room, not wanting to intrude on his conversations. At 72, I've learned to make myself smaller at gatherings like these, even in my own son's home. Then, one of his coworkers, a tall man in a crisp navy suit, handed him a slim envelope with a bow. "Happy birthday, Matt," the man said. "You and your family deserve this." Matthew tore it open, pulling out a glossy brochure. His eyes lit up like I hadn't seen in years. 3 tickets for a full week in Florida, all expenses paid. The room erupted in cheers. Carla clasped her hands dramatically. "Oh my God, this is perfect! We need this so much!" I felt a warmth spread in my chest. Florida? I hadn't been on a real vacation since my late husband was alive. The thought of walking along a sunlit beach, the warm ocean breeze in my hair, it made me feel almost young again. I stepped closer, smiling. "Oh, Matthew, that sounds wonderful. I'd love to go with you two. I haven't been to Florida in—" Before I could finish, Carla turned to me. Her smile was polite, but her eyes, they were sharp. "What are you getting into, Camilla?" she said lightly, though there was no mistaking the meaning. "This is for us. You're not part of our little family." It was as if someone had pulled the plug on all the warmth in the room. My ears rang. I glanced at Matthew, expecting, hoping he'd speak up, laugh it off, tell her not to be ridiculous. But he didn't. He just looked back at the brochure like he hadn't heard a thing. I swallowed hard, forcing a small laugh. Of course, I was just joking. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. The rest of the evening blurred. I handed out plates, refilled drinks, smiled when people looked my way. But inside, something was shifting. Every time I caught Carla's eye, I thought I saw that same glint of triumph, like she'd drawn a boundary and dared me to cross it again. When the last guest left, I lingered behind to help clear the table. Carla thanked me without looking up from her phone. Matthew kissed my cheek absently, already talking about packing for the trip. I walked the few blocks home alone. The night air was cool, the street quiet, except for the sound of my shoes on the pavement. Inside, I made myself a cup of tea, though I didn't drink it. I just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the dark window. The Florida beaches I'd pictured earlier seemed far away now, fading like a dream you can't hold on to after waking. And for the first time, I wondered if my place in my son's life was smaller than I had led myself believe. 2 weeks later, they were back. I knew the exact day they'd be arriving. I'd marked it on my kitchen calendar in blue ink. I'd even baked a cinnamon coffee cake, thinking it might be a nice way to welcome them home. When I heard Matthew's truck pull up, I peered through the lace curtain. He stepped out first, tanned and relaxed, followed by Carla in oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed straw hat. She was carrying so many shopping bags it looked like she'd robbed a boutique. I waited a few minutes before walking over, not wanting to seem overeager. But when I knocked, Carla opened the door with that smile of hers, wide but cold. "Oh, Camilla, hi, we just got in. I know, I said softly. I thought I'd come by, see how the trip went. Matthew appeared behind her, grinning. Florida was amazing, Mom. The weather, the food, it was just what we needed. I stepped inside, catching a whiff of ocean-scented sunscreen and new leather. The living room looked different. New throw pillows, a gleaming glass coffee table, and a massive framed photo of the two of them on a beach at sunset. No space for anyone else in that picture. We sat down, and I set the coffee cake on the table. It's fresh. Thought you might like something homemade after all that restaurant food. Thanks, Mom, Matthew said, but he didn't reach for it. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Actually, we wanted to talk to you about something. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. Oh? Carla crossed her legs and tilted her head like she was delivering news on TV. We've been thinking about our future. The business needs to grow if we're going to stay ahead. Expansion, new equipment, marketing, all that. That's great, I said slowly. I'm happy for you. Matthew's smile dimmed. Thing is, to make it work, we're going to have to cut back on some expenses. I stared at him. What kind of expenses? He cleared his throat. Well, I won't be able to help you out financially anymore. You know, with the bills, groceries, repairs. I think you'll be okay. You're pretty resourceful. The words landed like stones. For years, Matthew had insisted on sending me a little each month, saying it was the least he could do. It wasn't a fortune, but it covered the winter heating or the surprise plumbing bill. And now, he was speaking as if it had been a burden all along. I see, I murmured. Carla leaned forward, resting her manicured hand on his knee. We just can't keep supporting two households. You understand, right? I nodded, but my throat was tight. They were looking at me like I was an unnecessary expense. The conversation moved on quickly. They talked about Florida restaurants, boat rides, and some fancy spa Carla loved. I sat quietly, hearing only the echo of what they'd said. When I finally stood to leave, Matthew walked me to the door. You'll be fine, Mom, he said, as if reassuring a child. Outside, the air smelled faintly of rain. I walked home slower than usual, my cake still in its tin under my arm. No one had touched it. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the cake in front of me. I cut a slice, but it was dry on my tongue. Maybe it was the cinnamon. Or maybe it was just the taste of being reminded, yet again, of where I stood in their world. It was a Thursday morning when the phone rang. I had just finished watering the geraniums on the windowsill and was settling into my armchair with the newspaper. The clock on the wall ticked in its steady rhythm, the sound comforting in its regularity. I picked up the receiver. Hello? Camilla. It was Carla. Her voice was brisk, businesslike, as though she were making a call to one of her employees. We need to talk. I sat up a little straighter. Is everything all right? Well, she exhaled loudly. The business is at a critical stage. We've invested everything into expansion, but we're still short on capital. I frowned, twisting the phone cord around my finger. I thought you had savings for that. We did, she said quickly, but growth requires sacrifices, and you've got something that could make a huge difference. I already knew where she was headed, but I didn't interrupt. You're sitting on a valuable asset, Carla continued. That house of yours is worth a fortune now. The market's hot. You could sell and still have enough to move into a nice condo, something smaller, easier to take care of. The words sent a slow burn through my chest. This is my home, Carla. I've lived here for over 40 years. She made a small, impatient sound. Exactly. It's too much space for you now. You don't need it. And Matthew could put that money into the business. It would benefit the whole family. I gripped the receiver tighter. The whole family? Or just you two? There was a pause on the line. Camilla, you're being selfish. You raised Matthew to be ambitious. Now you're holding him back because of, what, sentimentality? Selfish, the word rang in my ears. I thought of the years I'd worked double shifts after my husband died, of the repairs I'd handled myself, of the nights I'd slept in this house alone but safe. I thought of the garden in the back, the kitchen table worn smooth from countless meals, the creak in the third step on the staircase. This house wasn't just a building, it was my anchor. "I'm not selling," I said firmly. "Not for you, not for anyone." Her voice hardened. "You'll regret this, Camilla. Opportunities don't wait forever." I hung up before she could say more. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. For the rest of the day, I moved through the rooms of my house like I was seeing them for the first time, running my hand along the banister, pausing at the window where I used to watch Matthew play in the yard. I told myself she couldn't force me. This was mine. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew. Carla wasn't the type to let things go. It was a quiet Monday morning, the kind where the sunlight falls in neat stripes through the blinds, and you almost believe nothing bad can touch you. I'd been in the kitchen humming softly while making oatmeal when I heard the crunch of tires on my driveway. Not Matthew's car, not Carla's flashy SUV. I glanced through the curtain, a shiny black sedan, and behind it a white SUV with the logo of a local realty company plastered on the side. My gut twisted. 3 people got out, 2 men in crisp suits and a woman in a fitted blazer, all holding leather folders. They moved with the confidence of people who already believed they owned the place. The doorbell rang. I opened it just enough to look at them. "Yes?" The woman stepped forward with a bright, artificial smile. "Mrs. Carver, we're here for the preliminary walkthrough. We understand the property is being listed for sale." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She flipped open her folder, showing me a stack of papers with my address printed neatly at the top. "Your son and his wife contacted our office last week. They've authorized us to begin preparations for staging and valuation." Something cold slid down my spine. "Authorized you? This is my house. They can't authorize anything." One of the men shifted uncomfortably. The other cleared his throat. "Well, according to the information we were given, the property is in transition to family ownership, and—" "Stop right there." My voice was sharper than I intended. "There is no transition. There is no sale. You're trespassing on my property." The woman's smile faltered. "Mrs. Carver, I understand this is emotional, but we have a timeline to keep." I stepped outside, oatmeal forgotten, anger warming me like a furnace. "You're going to take your timeline, your clipboards, and your smug little attitudes, and you're going to walk back to your cars right now before I call the police." For a beat, no one moved. Then the taller man muttered, "Let's go," and the group turned, retreating to the driveway with a mix of annoyance and embarrassment. The sedan's engine started. The SUV followed. Within minutes, the street was empty again. I stood there, heart pounding, watching them disappear. The air felt thick, heavy. Carla had done this. She'd actually gone behind my back to sell my house. I locked the door, checked the windows, and spent the rest of the day pacing the floors. Every creak in the woods sounded like a warning. If she was bold enough to send realtors to my door, what would she do next? I didn't know then that the answer would change everything and put me in control in a way Carla could never have imagined. I sat in my living room with the TV on low, more for the noise than anything else, my mind looping through every cruel word Carla had ever thrown at me. "You're not part of our family. We can't keep giving you money. You should just sell this place." For weeks I'd been swallowing the hurt, telling myself Matthew was just caught in the middle. But sending strangers to my house? That was calculated. That was war. I made myself a cup of strong coffee at dawn, sat down at my desk and opened my safe. Inside were 3 neat binders of documents, my insurance, my will, and one very important folder labeled in my late husband's handwriting. It still amazed me how easily people forgot, or maybe never knew, that the business Matthew ran, the one he liked to brag about building from the ground up, was originally my husband's company. When my husband passed away, the ownership didn't magically transfer to Matthew. No, It came to me. I had let Matthew manage it because I believed in giving him responsibility. I even gave him a generous salary, much more than most people his age ever earned. But it was still mine. Every building, every account, every contract, mine. And with ownership came power. I called our corporate accountant, a loyal man who'd known me since the days when my husband first started the company. "Good morning, Mrs. Carver," he said warmly. "I need you to freeze all disbursements to Matthew Carver effective immediately," I said, my voice steady. "I'll be by the office this afternoon to collect the updated financials." There was a pause. Then, without a single question, he said, "Understood." The rest of the morning I spent making calls. The cruise tickets they'd taken for that Florida trip, I had given them to Matthew, quietly, months ago. My own gift, the one they'd never thanked me for. I called the travel agency and requested the receipts to prove it. By noon, I was sitting in the business office, pen in hand, signing a series of orders that temporarily suspended Matthew's authority on all accounts. I changed the locks on the administrative building. I even sent a letter to every major client, letting them know I was back at the helm. When I walked out of that office, the summer sun felt different, warmer, stronger. I wasn't the powerless old woman they thought they could push into a nursing home. That evening, my phone rang. Matthew. "Mom, what's going on? I just got a call from the bank." "You and Carla wanted me out of my house," I said. "You sent realtors to my door. You decided to stop giving me money as if it were yours to give. Well, I've decided to stop giving you the business." He stammered. You can't." "I can," I said quietly, "and I have." I hung up before he could say another word. For the first time in months, I sat back on my couch and let myself smile. A few days passed. The house felt quieter than it had in decades, yet somehow fuller, as if every piece of furniture, every corner of the walls, were quietly applauding the fact that I had taken control of my life again. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching the backs of chairs, the edge of the table, the soft rug under my feet, and felt a sense of ownership so deep it was almost physical. Then, one morning, there was a knock at the door. My first instinct was to ignore it, thinking perhaps it was another pushy realtor or some courier delivering junk mail. But the sound persisted, soft, tentative, almost apologetic. I opened the door cautiously. There they were, Matthew and Carla. Matthew's eyes were wide, filled with an emotion I hadn't seen in years, humility, maybe even fear. Carla held a bouquet of roses, their petals bright and impossibly red against the morning sun. I studied them, noting every detail, the slight slump of Matthew's shoulders, the nervous tapping of Carla's fingers against the flowers. They had been humbled. "Mom," Matthew began, his voice low and careful, We came to apologize. Everything we did was wrong. We shouldn't have sent those realtors. We shouldn't have tried to take your money, your home, or your business. I lost sight of what matters." Carla stepped forward, holding out the bouquet. "We're sorry, Camilla, truly. I can't say we deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for it. Please accept these flowers as a start." I took a deep breath, looking at the red petals, at the faces of the two people who had caused me so much grief over the past months. I could feel the anger still simmering beneath my skin, but I also felt the relief of having proven my strength, of having stood my ground when they had underestimated me. I took the flowers from Carla, placing them carefully on the kitchen table. "I've spent my whole life raising, guiding, and supporting the people I love," I said slowly. "Sometimes it's not enough just to be related by blood. Respect and gratitude have to be earned." Matthew nodded, swallowing hard. "We understand, Mom, and we will do better, we promise." I smiled faintly, a mixture of warmth and caution. "I'm glad you've realized it. But remember, actions speak louder than words. If you truly want to rebuild this relationship, you'll have to show it." There was a long silence, filled only with the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside. Then Carla said softly, "Thank you, Camilla. We'll do whatever it takes." I watched as they turned to leave, feeling a curious combination of exhaustion and triumph. They had finally come face to face with the truth. I was not a woman to be ignored, pushed aside, or underestimated me. I had my home, my business, and most importantly, my dignity intact. After closing the door behind them, I leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The house felt alive again, buzzing not with tension, but with a quiet peace. I walked through the rooms, touched the walls, and smiled at the sunlight streaming through the windows. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free.